All right, now we're gonna go through the rear of the truck and we're gonna install our Minitruck back half and go through all the steps for that on this Tacoma, shop Tacoma as well. So follow along, we'll show you what's up. You'll see we did some work on the truck here, off camera, nothing major. All we really did was put the truck up on the chassis table, level it, bolt it down to the chassis with it welded on so we know it stays straight and square, because we're going to be doing quite a bit to this truck to show you all the different things that we do, so we wanted the truck just to stay in the same spot. It's not required for the front, but the back would be better to have it where it's tied down and secure, because you're going to cut off the back end. And so knowing where that axle placement in is and keeping everything straight and square is the best. Basically, we've already stripped the bed off of here, and then we got to get fuel tank, exhaust, drive line, wiring, strip all that stuff off and set it out of the way. And then we'll go around and take some reference measurements. So I recommend getting a measurement for bed mounts, rear, middle, front, axle center line, both sides, and that'll give us some idea of, you know, where everything was factory, and when we start putting this back together, it goes and everything bolts right back up. So we'll go ahead and do that now, then we'll be back and strip this all out. Center line there, axle, and then on this one, we went from center of bed mount down to the table, made a mark, so we got that point location, and then we'll just move around. So we got everything marked out on the table. See right there, axle center line, front bed mount, mid bed mount, rear mid mount. So we have all our reference, and we have that on both sides, so we can strip the rest of the frame out and be able to mark out for the front. And what we'll do is we'll move from the axle center line, we'll come up our mount for the front cross member on the back half, cut the frame off, and then be able to put it on. So we got this all marked out where we're gonna cut this frame, and so the easiest way to do this is front bed mount, drop plumb bob, got the center line, and then we know and we'll include this as part of the back half for Tacoma, but we figured it out to center the axle and everything is 8.79 inches from center of front bed mount to the front of the new back half. So we marked that out, made this line, and that's where we're gonna cut the frame off at. Then we'll be able to take that new back half, slide it up here, right on that, and that will put our axle where we need to center in the wheel well. It may move a little bit from factory location. We don't care, because we're centering the wheel in the bed, and the bed's in the factory location. So we're getting everything stripped out here, get it all cut off. The one thing I do want to show is that here on this brake stuff, factory, they had like this overload weirdness thing, so it sent pressure back to the front and redistributed proportion the brake. So we're gonna get rid of all this, even if you're not doing a back half. If you're doing our rear disc brake kit or the manual conversion or any of that, most likely you'll just want to eliminate this. And this top line is the one that comes back, feeds into this and to the rear end. So you'll want to eliminate this line and the bottom line. You can either cap it off or just eliminate this whole thing, make a little bracket and go to a soft line, however you want to do there. We're just going to eliminate the whole thing and replumb it. We'll strip it out and cut the back half off. She's cut free now. Pick her up. I gotta go around this brake line so we don't smash it. Time to set the new back half up there. Let's see how it looks. Go your way a little bit. Then back's gotta come towards me. What are we, oh, we're hitting the lines up. That's what we're doing. I was like, we're pivoting on something. So, looks like we gotta undo that clamp there for the brake. Oh, those are all fuel lines. So, we gotta take the clamp off where the fuel lines are in the center. They're poking out of the cab, so we can move those down. So, we got the new back half just kind of mocked up in there. I'll show you where we got for now. All we do is just C-clamp a plate on the bottom of the factory chassis just for that to sit on. You can see there's the height difference there from the factory, so we have to taper it to match that all in, because this is 2x4 and the factory's 5.5 roughly, but depending on how, you know, body drop or how people are doing their back half, I'm just showing you what factory is. So there's a look at the new back half just kind of mocked up on there. You can see how it all fits pretty good and easy. So just got to make the tie-in plates, get it all squared up. We'll keep working on it. So I just thought I would explain this a little bit better. So we had it mounted on the bottom before, and so there's two different settings I could say for this back half. Is if this is down on the bottom and matched with the frame, then it's for like a 24-inch tire, 18-inch wheel, it'll still lay out. If we need a little bit bigger tire, like a 26-inch tire for like a 20-inch wheel, then you match it to the top on the Tacoma, and then you can make a gusset to fill it in here. So that gives you the option for a couple different tire heights and still have the same back half. So we're gonna mount it here on the top. So what we're gonna do is get this figured out, and then back here on the chassis, we have these rods that are evenly spaced, and we put those up, and then we can measure back here on each side and make sure that the back of the chassis is square to the rest of the truck, and then pull diagonals. So you can just pull diagonals off from the front of the chassis or somewhere in midpoint back to the back of the chassis and get those close as possible, 1/16 of an inch or less ideal, and then level the frame this way. And then as part of the instructions on the back half we'll give you, but the bottom of this rail to the bottom of the front part is 5.8 inches difference. So then you can do the math from whatever your reference is to get that set for where this rail is compared to the front. So you got the tilt, then you get all the measurements. So we'll get that all dialed in, get everything all set, and then get it tacked in and show you from there. So now we got this all tacked in up here up front. We have these plates, and these are specific for a Tacoma. If it's just a universal back half, you know, you might have to figure out your own, but basically this comes out to the edge. The new back half comes out to the edge of the stock frame, and then this can line up here, so it comes over here, then angles down, and then there'll be some like this plate that boxes this in, another triangle piece in the back here, box that off, and then as an extra safety precaution we have these other pieces here where this triangle's got a short side and a long side, and so those just go here on the inside as a top and a bottom gusset like this, and this plate would go in the corner like this on the long side and box in and triangulate this box. So I can show you here. So like so, and you got that, and then there's a plate that goes across here, and then you put one in the bottom as well. And then this will just kind of show you where you can put this back up here. Something like that, and it'll box it in. And I've done the other side, so I'll run around here, come over here, and this is what it looks like all done. Kind of hard to see in there behind the cab, but that's all. This is all boxed in on the back, and then that plate has been fully welded in, and the bottom's all boxed in and everything. So this is all boxed in, good to go. We're probably gonna pull the truck off the frame jig. We got some more projects to come on here. and then we'll start going through showing you how to put all the link bars and get the axle in and do all the stuff for that, and build out and make this a roller. But this is all the critical stuff for the chassis. So now after this, it'll be all one. We can just take it off the chassis table and do everything on the concrete floor in the shop or wherever. So more coming. So we got the truck off the table now, where you saw it last time. And so here's all the suspension parts laid out for the back half. So we got the rails all welded up. And then this is a pre-Tacoma rear end. So pre-90, 93 and back. I don't remember exactly what year this one is, in the 80s. But that will give you naturally about a 2-inch wider, or a 2-inch narrower rear end than factory Tacoma. So that helps narrow everything up and help everything tuck in. As you lay out the truck, those bed sides are rolling in, and so you need to narrow it up a little bit to allow those to tuck up in. So it got everything laid out here. We'll just kind of go over it real quick on all the components, and then we'll start putting everything in. We just got to put the axle in, get all the components on there, set driveline angle and check everything, and then finish weld it out. We're good. So the lower links here, we have bag on bar set up, 30-inch long link bushing on both ends. So you got bushings and sleeves to go with it, and then built-in shock pin, like we like to do with a lot of stuff. So the upper shock pin is built in on the chassis, and the lower one is on the lower arm. And then we have the 4-link brackets. So all 4 are unique. This is specifically for a Watts link setup. So the 2 larger ones are lowers. And so one gets the Watts link bar, one does not. One is just a lower link. And then you have 2 upper link bars. One gets the upper link watts, and the other one gets just the upper 4 link bars, which are these, which are adjustable bushings on both ends. Then you have, I don't know what you want, but the Watts pivot, little propeller thing. And so this gets Delrin bushings, pivot bolt, and then the actual Watts link bars themselves with bushings on one end and adjustable heims on the other, and misalignment spacers, and then Bilstein shocks. So it's that's everything for the Watts version. So the best way to tackle this basically is to put the bushings in everything and get it all ready, and then we'll start with the lower links. Put the lower links on the front, on each side, put them up to the axle, and like these, the easiest ones to start with this one, which is the Watts. Put it on there, and then this face will be level. So if you have your truck level, you want this to be vertical, and that will set your bushing parallel to the ground. So that'll go on the axle. That'll help you set your Watts. And so you'll want to set these, measure the width in the front of the A, and then make sure that width it matches on the axle itself. And then you can set the lower bars, set the upper bars. The upper bars are set to 20 inches, center of eye to eye, basically, or center of bushing to center of bushing. So set those exactly at 20 inches and make sure they're the same. The easiest way to do is set them all up and then put a bolt through both ends. And if a bolt slides through both ends side by side, then you know both links are exactly the same length. So that'll help get those set, because you want, this is critical that you get everything all set where you want. You can do fine adjustment with the uppers, but you want to get everything as close to perfect as you can while this setup. So you want to get your axle centered in the chassis, forward and back, close to where you want, and this stuff will help you set that as well. But then you also want to check your wheelbase. If it's not for a Tacoma or something else, you have the reference marks that you did at the very beginning that we talked about. Make sure your axle center line is still over the original location for wheelbase, and or where you want it centered in the bed. So we'll go over that now. We'll time lapse all this stuff, just installing it all, and then we'll go back and show you where we're at. So we're over here at the vise. getting ready to put in the bushing ends for the Watts link pivot. And so these are going to be a press fit. So the easiest way to do it is to use the vise, put the bushing in, put it between a couple plates, or if you have smooth jaws on the vise, that's okay. Push them in, and they're naturally going to shrink the ID hole here for the pivot bolt. So you need to push in both of these bushings, press them in. They'll be tight because we don't want them to pivot. We want the pivot to be between the bolt and the Delrin, not the Delrin to spin between on the pivot. So press these in, they'll be a little tight. And then you're gonna have to take a drill bit and ream this back out to 5/8 of an inch, so that then you get a smooth operation with this bolt. And one more thing to note is if you're gonna powder coat, like don't push the bushing in until this is on its finish, because they're never really gonna come out. So if you wanna powder coat them, or this Watts pivot, then you're not gonna want these bushings in, because then it's gonna ruin them. Or if you're just gonna paint it, that's fine, you can tape them off. But if you do powder coat it, make sure they don't get any powder coat inside this bore, or you're gonna have to sand it out of there and get it out of there, because then it would definitely be too tight of a press fit. So make sure this bore is clean and good, not have a bunch of paint and crap in it when you go to push these in, or you'll probably ruin these Delrin bushings, because it only, we only want it to be a few thousandths press, not to be 10 or 15 or 20 thousandths. There you go, pushed in. So now we'll just run a drill bit 5/8 through there and be ready to put it in chassis. So now we got this all measured out, squared up, and set where we need. So the process we kind of used was this axle needs to be straight over this lower pivot here. So a good reference is to measure from right here, this flat face, back to the front of the axle. That was 29 7/8. So get this set. You got to square the, you got to center the axle, set your pinion, square it, pull diagonals each way, make sure this is all good to go. Then we're gonna go tack the lowers, get them set, and then we can go place these uppers. You also gotta make sure the lower width, matches the front, and they're running parallel in the back. There's a lot of moving parts. You're gonna go back and forth a bunch of times just getting it all square. Jack stands and, angle finders and stuff like that. But so we'll get this all tacked up for the lower stuff, then we'll adjust the front bars and get them parallel, make sure. So we just do it each one at one time, not try to get every single thing all at once. and then we'll move on to watts, and I'll show you just the setup on the watts as well. So the other thing to note is here you'll see our ground clamp is on the rear end itself because we're rubber bushing. So you want to make sure that you have ground either to the part you're welding on, the axle, something there. You don't want to have to try to go through all the bushings. So we'll get this tacked up and then be back and work on the upper bars and watts. So we got the 4-link bars all tacked in. Next thing to work on here is the watts link. So if I had the watts link, here is the, I don't know what to call it, the pivot, the watts link pivot, arm, propeller. I don't know, it kind of looks like a propeller. So what you'll see here is there's holes here in the top, and then on these gusset plates, there's a high one and a low one. The low one needs to point towards the heim, and this bolt is up. And you'll see right here on this mount, there's like a little tab. And all this does, this hole in this tab, it aligns the propeller to a neutral position on how it was designed for when you set it up at ride height. So we got the pivot bolt. We'll stick this in here like that. And then there's a captive nut here on the back side, or like a little hex, so you can fish the nut in, which is open on the back. And then you'll take just 3/8 and put it in there to lock this in the ride height position, is how this is designed. And then what we'll do is we'll lift the axle up and into ride height, and then we will adjust these heims. We'll put it in ride height, and we'll adjust the heims for the upper and lower bars to line up exactly into the holes on the propeller. And then that will set, and when you do that, make sure your rear end is centered, obviously, and that will set your movement, and it will make the lateral movement of the watts be the minimal as possible. And so the way this designed, I don't remember the exact number, but it's something like thousandths of an inch that this axle moves sideways. It's very little. So the watts does a really good job of laterally keeping it straight through all 10 inches of travel. So it's just critical to use this alignment pin, and then obviously pull that pin out, and then you can cycle everything. So we'll do that real quick and show that, and then the rear end be set up. It'll be ready to just fully weld out. So we'll lift her up to ride height. Oh, hold on a little bit more. There we go. Check that and make sure it's ride height with the. So ride height here, you'll want to be 5 1/4 inches about. That's half travel. It's really, because we have 10 inches of total travel, so you want to put the axle about 5 1/4 inches from the notch. It's pretty good. And then, we forgot to put the pivot bolt in. Not the pivot bolt, but the alignment pin. Like I said, don't forget that. Okay. So now, I start adjusting these until it fits. Okay, that goes in there. And then we check. Where are we at? Which way we gotta go? There we go. Now we check axle measurement side to side, and that will be centered. To where?
Outside of this. I guess we could have.
Yeah, 41 3/8. Okay, so all centered. Yeah, so then here, now that we have this all set, you kind of got to go backwards and pull. Make sure you pull these pins out because we got to get this center pivot out. So take the center pin out of it, and then we'll just put the watts back in here. There we go, and then we can cycle it. Just like that. No binding, nothing, good to go. Here, I'll grab, just kind of do a little walk around so you can see everything here. So, lower bracket, upper bracket, the link bars, there's the watts. So that just kind of shows the setup there. So we'll go ahead and weld out all these brackets, pull the axle and weld the brackets on the axle, and then we're ready to reassemble it and cycle the whole truck, put the airbags in and lay it all out. We got it. Got it all reassembled. Got everything on there. Got the bags. Joe's just jacking it up. Get off the jack stands. Got the wheels on it. So we're gonna let it down for the first time and show you what it looks like with the truck on the ground. There we go. First time on the ground. On its own weight. On full suspension. It rolls. Woo! That's exciting. All right, there we go. Laid out all the way. We forgot to pull the cardboard out underneath the truck, and now we can't get it out. That's how low it is. Just got some temporary airline on there. We just had to check it out, but do a little walk around. Yeah. Nothing, no gap. We didn't put the fender on yet, but there's still room. Stick my finger in all that. As far as space for the tire, we're getting everything all wrapped up. So this side's got a, there we go. There's a good shot of it. Thanks to the guys in the shop helping out. We got her done. There we are. Laid out Tacoma. Yeah, buddy. Here it is. This is to show you what the truck looks like at ride height. So this will be, it's about half travel, I guess. Some people call it ride height, but half travel. Puts the truck, it's roughly about 4.5 inches off the ground. So there you go. Now we'll continue on. We're gonna work on other mounts for the back half for this truck for fuel tank and air management. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There's the complete install of the back half. All right, that completes the install on the back half for the Tacoma. Hopefully it was informative and you got what you needed, the little details to give you some tips and tricks. So stay tuned and we'll come out with more stuff for Tacoma and more videos. Thanks for watching.